Good evening. So I just got off the phone to an old colleague of mine at Games Workshop. We had a really cool conversation about when certain things have happened in the hobby that have really affected you in store, in terms of releases and different things like that. And he came at me with a story. I was not at the company when Age of Sigmar was released, but he came at me with a story. Now this is when he was working in a local store to me, where I am right now, and Age of Sigmar was released. Let's call him James, right? He had a real problem with Age of Sigmar deep down inside. And it's always really difficult when you're working for Games Workshop, when they do something absolutely stupid, that you're kind of thinking, what do I do? You know, what do I do? What do I say? And you've got to toe the company line. And he said for months he had to talk up Age of Sigmar like it was going to be this fantastic, wonderful thing. And everyone else in the store seemed to be actually believing that too. To the point where he would actually take one or two of his colleagues aside when they were out drinking or doing whatever, and he'd say, "Hey, do you actually like the thought of Sigmar?" And like, "Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be this, it's gonna be that." And he just said, "Well, I like the old world. I like the old world." And when Games Workshop then releases Age of Sigmar, obviously you're no longer allowed to play the old world in store. They neuter the whole thing. It's gone. We don't want to talk about it anymore. It's now Age of Sigmar. It's now a Saturday morning cartoon. You know, big, bold colours and, you know, basically Space Marines in fantasy and things like that, right? And the one thing that really panicked me when I first joined the company was the fact that the people working at Games Workshop wouldn't acknowledge the Sigmarine aesthetic. They wouldn't acknowledge that they look similar. They literally supplanted reality with their own and said, no, they don't look like Space Marines at all. And it's like, well, yes, they do. That's the whole fucking point. That's why people are getting really pissed off, right? One thing the old world didn't need was a bunch of bloody Space Marines running around, right? So, fast forward to when I'm working at Games Workshop now, and I will freely admit in my store, I didn't really push Age of Sigmar as much as I should have. Mainly because it's one of our flagship games. I should have been in there, you know, plugging away at it. I just didn't like it. And I was sick of lying to myself saying that I did like it because I worked at Games Workshop. I didn't like it. I thought it was shit. You know, I didn't like the way the game flowed. I didn't like most of how the armies are balanced. And I thought, do you know what? If you just made another edition of Warhammer, the old world, but took away the trays and had similar rules to the old world, I'd be so happy. That'd be exactly what most of the people that come into my store, I'd get it all the time. They'd say, I really used to like Warhammer, but then, you know, you guys took away Warhammer Fantasy, and, you know. And I'd have people at Games Workshop say, or the managers say, no, we didn't. You can still play it. It's not in the store. Like, that's the whole point, dude. That's like Disney saying, oh, you can still watch, like, Disney's Hercules at home, but we'll never show it on the Disney Plus channel. Like, why? If you're not going to value it as your own IP, why should they value it as a thing? You can't turn up the prices of the models saying, hey, you know, you guys decide how much it's worth to you, and we'll do the prices accordingly. Well, if people liked Warhammer Fantasy, then keep Warhammer Fantasy, right? Or do both. Why can't you do both? If you really want to end the old world, why can't you do like an MCU thing? Where we're going into an alternate dimension now, we're going to see what would happen if Chaos won and the old world is destroyed. Ba-ba, Age of Sigmar. And of course you can use Age of Sigmar models in Warhammer, and vice versa. You'd sell twice the fucking models, right? Now, one thing I will say, and this is true, if you've ever heard this, is that the sales for Warhammer Fantasy were dipping for quite a long time. But I think that is a fallacy in itself, because Warhammer as a hobby, as in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, was left in the dust by Warhammer 40,000. Games Workshop saw what was selling, and they put their weight behind it. They put their weight behind Warhammer 40,000, and they didn't touch Warhammer Fantasy. It got next to no updates. It got next to no advertisement. It got next to no presence online or in memes or in any sort of, in any sort of communication with the hobbyists. It got no representation. And again, if you're not going to treat it as important yourself as a company, why the hell should your players treat it as important? And so anyone saying, well, it wasn't selling very well, that's Games Workshop's fault. That's not Warhammer's fault. If Warhammer had the power behind it that 40k was given in terms of being pushed and in terms of, having store space and things like that, we wouldn't have seen it die. We wouldn't have seen it die. Now, when I was working at Games Workshop, again, this is more of a broad theory video rather than an actual story video. When I was working at Games Workshop, we were given specific briefs to not let Warhammer Fantasy be played in store, because we don't sell it anymore. We sell Age of Sigmar. I don't like it when companies try to have their cake and eat it. I don't like it when companies say, well, you can still buy these and play them as Warhammer, but you can't play them in the store once you buy them. That's bullshit. No, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And this is why I stick up for Games Workshop about the Forge World rule. Okay? I don't sell Forge World models in store. So as far as Games Workshop are concerned, you're not allowed to play with those Forge World models in store. That's fine. I get that. I get the reasoning behind that. That's fine. That's fine. What I don't get is people buying Warhammer products. And by the way, a lot of these models still had Warhammer Old World packaging, right? They still literally had the red box with Warhammer on it, right? But you can't play Warhammer in store. It was just a complete mess, and I hated doing it. And so I would actually encourage people to go and play Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Here's a funny thing. Here's where a story comes into it. So my new trainer turns up to the store, and we're doing a little training day, and I'm going around the store, and I'm helping people out. And one person comes in, and I honestly forget that my trainer is there. He's sitting behind me painting, 4 or 5 feet away, and I forget he's there. And I'm talking to a customer, and he says, "Look, I really like dwarves. I just really, really like dwarves." And I was like, "All right, this is really cool. All right." I said, "Well, we got these steampunk dwarves over here, which are like Kharadron overlords, and they are essentially, well, steampunk dwarves. I mean, look at this guy. He has a machine gun in his metal mustache." And the guy's like, "Whoa, that's really cool. But no, I like more old school dwarves." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Let me pull you over here. We only have 2 boxes here, but we've got many more in the back that I'll get out for you if you like. We have these long beards, and we have these, and I've shown them all of the dwarves. And I said, look, these are mainly used in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They can be used in Age of Sigmar too." And he said, well, that's the one I've heard of. And I said, "Oh, Age of Sigmar." And he goes, No, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. It's online. Like they do. It's the one with the trays." And I was like, "Yeah, cool. All right, cool." So yeah, Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So I started gushing about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, about how fucking cool it is, and how cool the old world is, and how cool the nations are in the old world. I even started going on about things like Zweihander and things like that, because that was a Kickstarter at the time. I was like, "Yeah, this has got this new role-playing game coming out for it. It's gonna be great." Blah blah blah. I went out and got him load of dwarves. He ended up spending about £80 on dwarves. Left on cloud 9. He's like, "Yes, got my dwarves." He's gonna go away and paint them, and he's gonna go find himself a gaming club. And then once, to be fair, as he was leaving the store, I said, "Yeah, if you come here on a Thursday night, I will play Warhammer with you. I don't give a shit. It's fine." So he left, and my trainer calls me over. Now, it fucking made me irate when they would give you like the come here finger. You know what I mean? Like you're a fucking school child. So I went over there. Okay, and I'm thinking at this stage of my time at Games Workshop, I'm thinking, what now? Like, what now? And he's just like, "Please tell me what went wrong in that interaction." And I was like, "I don't know. The guy walked out with £80 worth of models. I mean, I'm only displaying like £40 worth of dwarves, and I sold him double that. So, and he seemed happy. And he said, Irrelevant. We don't play Warhammer Fantasy Battles in store." Now, bear in mind, he didn't hear what I'd said to him on the way out. He didn't hear that. He said, "We don't play it in store, so we don't sell them as Warhammer Fantasy Battles. We sell them as Age of Sigmar, because that we can play in store, we can push, and we can we're trying to unify everything here, and that message that you're giving out is very problematic." I'm like, "Okay, well, what if what if he wants to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles? You know, then he can go elsewhere and play it. Yeah, and that's what I said. Yeah, and we got into this debate about, you know, what I can and can't say to my customers in the store. Anyway, I got a warning, an official warning, because not only was I doing what they called malpractice, but I was also arguing the point, and I wasn't taking any instruction on the matter. And yeah, so that was my of my 2 big marks against my name. That was one of them. When I literally just sat there and was like, no, this is ridiculous. It's got Warhammer on the front of the fucking box. It doesn't say Age of Sigmar on the front of the fucking box. It says Warhammer. Big Warhammery letters. There's Warhammer right there. You know, and we I guess my fucking blood boiling and thinking about it. Anyway. So, needless to say, I didn't agree with the decision to just neuter and take away Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Times may have changed in Games Workshop stores. You may be able to do it now. As far as I know, you're still not allowed to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles in the store. One of the points I made, though, was that only 6 months ago, I was allowed to play Blood Bowl in the store because we brought out Blood Bowl, right? We brought a new edition of Blood Bowl, and I was playing it in the store, and I was allowed to play it in the store. I even had a little store league going on. So why aren't I allowed to do, like, that's, please remind me what world Blood Bowl takes place in? Oh, right, yeah, the Warhammer world. Okay, cool. So I'm allowed that, so that's not Age of Sigmar, is it? No, that's Warhammer. It says on the fucking box, right? It's Warhammer. It's not Age of Sigmar. It's not Age of Sigmar Blood Bowl, is it? No, it's Warhammer Blood Bowl. But we're allowed to play that in store because we sell it in store. But I sell Warhammer in store. I just, it's the picking and choosing of following different rules that I just couldn't get my noggin around. Anyway, moving on. One thing that really stuck in my mind about the way Age of Sigmar went is that every single time we would do a retail workshop or anything like that, all they would talk about with Age of Sigmar is how actiony it was, how cool and Saturday morning cartoon it was. That's literally their words. It was He-Man Masters of the Universe, you know, that kind of a thing, that kind of a deal. And whilst that's got its place in fantasy fiction, don't get me wrong, the one thing that really drew me to Warhammer, as in the old world, is that it's one of those worlds where you could go in and you could lift up a stone and there would be moss and bugs underneath there, right? It had depth. If you look at the Empire, yes, the Empire as an example is this large empire loosely based on the Holy Roman Empire. Right, okay, cool. Let's look further in. Look at the elector counts. Look how all the different cities and different places interact with each other. Look how the vampire counts are technically quote-unquote part of the Empire, right? That's fucking cool. It's really, really cool how the Empire burgeons out, and it's almost got like a Discworld feel to it. I loved it. I loved that pseudo-imperial look to the world and to the Empire itself, you know? The culture itself was really distinguished from anything else in the world. It was very human in the way that you would go on about it, you know? It was very, very human. And you got races like the Elves, which have their own, which have Ulthuan and all that, and it's almost like an elven Atlantis that's out there, and the Dark Elves with Nagarond and all these other really cool things, and the Dwarves. Going to get me started on the bloody Dwarves and their grudges, and just an absolutely amazing, rich background to each and every single one of these races. That is then supplanted by Age of Sigmar in store. Think about how I just talked about Warhammer Fantasy, yeah? Think of how many touchstones I could bring up when somebody got excited about Warhammer Fantasy. I'm going to now try and do the same for Age of Sigmar. Stormcast Eternals. Essentially, Stormcast Eternals are the spirits of dead warriors who are then brought back by Sigmar for some reason. Somehow. And they fight for him until they die again and then they come back. That's Stormcast Eternals. Right? How about Orcs? How about Orcs? Or Orcs, sorry. Trademark Orcs in Age of Sigmar. Okay, let me try that one. They're big, green, angry guys who want to destroy everything. Okay? No, right, move. And just another thing. Let me describe the Orcs in Warhammer Fantasy. Orcs in Warhammer Fantasy have been fighting an age-long battle with the dwarves over the deep places of the world, right? The longer they fight, the bigger they grow, right? And Grimgor Ironhide is the biggest, baddest, meanest motherfucker of them all. This is a guy who could probably take down several of the world-ending threats in the world if he was one-on-one with them, right? Their entire culture is defined by being big, bad, and brutal, right? They use teeth, T-E-E-F, as their currency to buy things, because you knock them out of somebody's mouth and you use them as currency, right? But in a weird way, if a human approached an orc war party and beat up the biggest, baddest orc there, do you know what the orcs would do in Warhammer Fantasy? This never happened, but it was a lost opportunity. They would follow that human. They'd be like, this guy's the biggest, baddest motherfucker in the... And if he kept on beating the biggest, baddest orcs in that warband, he could lead the fucking warband. He was totally allowed to... There's nothing in the setting saying he couldn't do that, right? But what are orcs in Age of Sigmar? They're called Orcs, trademark, and they're big and angry. You know. And one of them rides a giant cabbage with teeth. Don't get me wrong, that's pretty cool. Right? I just don't understand... It's everything that Warhammer Fantasy was, boiled down to the lowest common denominator. And that's why I struggle to push it in my store. And that's why a lot of other people, during my time at Games Workshop, had similar issues. And that they were like, well, when a customer says, you know, this looks cool, I'm like, yeah, that's a tree elf thing. Alright, well, what are they all about? Well, they're trees that are possessed by the spirits of dead elves. Like, what do they want? They want to not die, right? What about the elves in Warhammer Fantasy? Oh, well, you know, they've got this amazing thing where they're losing their immortality slowly but surely, and they're so into nobility and having their own noble bloodlines that they're their own worst enemy. Sometimes the noble houses of elves will not turn up for each other, or one of them will wanna lead an army over another one just because of his seniority of rank, not because of how good he is on the battlefield, right? They are the most interlinked race in Warhammer Fantasy with magic, right? They're almost naturally attuned to it, and they live in this place called Ulthuan, which is like an elven Atlantis. It's like a wondrous place that's protected by a vortex that makes sure that evil magics can't get into this place. So it's the only place in the Warhammer world that magic can't touch, and the Skaven can't even get into it. I mean, the Skaven get everywhere. The Skaven can't even get into this place because of how magically powerful the elves are. You know, they have kings and queens and their own intersign battles against each other. And don't get me started on the Dark Elves. When I get into Malus Blackblade, we'll be here all Darkblade, sorry, we'll be here all day, right? That's what we lost. We lost that. We lost the ability to reel customers in to Warhammer Fantasy battles. Now, people will say to me, well, you know, Age of Sigmar technically sells more than Warhammer did. Yes. Do you know why? Because people use Age of Sigmar models in Warhammer 40,000. That's why. I know, because I do it. And I know a lot of other people who do it. I know a lot of people who spend a lot of money on their armies. I know one orc player, most of his orcs in his army are all Age of Sigmar orcs, because they look better. They look better. He buys them, and he just throws bits on them. Throws guns on them. You know, it's just so simple to do. I'm telling you now that the reason why it doesn't even sell so much. The reason why it sells quite a lot, not even quite a lot, it's way outpaced by Warhammer 40,000. But the reason why it sells more than what Warhammer Fantasy did is because Warhammer Fantasy was left to sink or swim on its own and never got pushed. It never ever got pushed. Sigmar has been rammed down people's throats since it came out, and people still mostly use it to accrue cooler looking Warhammer 40,000 models. So, in store, the tap was turned off for Warhammer Fantasy battles, and that is a shame. And I really hope that when Games Workshop start to bring it back, and they start to to bring back the old world. I know they've announced it. I really hope what they do is they either keep it exactly as it was, but with newer models and a new edition, right? With trays and all sorts, or they just ditch the trays, right? They make it a lot more like 40k in that way, but they keep the soul of what Warhammer Fantasy Battles was. So unit coherency means a lot more and things like that. So you still got these regiments moving up and down the table, but you're not shifting them around on trays. You know, they've got like a more freeform movement, if you know what I mean. That's the only thing I would change. Everything else about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I would just port over and try and fit it into what we're now doing with Age of Sigmar and things like that. I wouldn't Sigmarify it up. I don't like that, but I would actually. I'm going to use the word dumbing down. I would dumb down some of the rules, yes. I would make it more accessible to people first picking up the hobby. Because I would want my veteran hobbyists to be able to pick this up and play right now. Right now. You don't need to go home and read the rules back to front and sideways and up and down to get it. You can read it on 2 sheets of paper. You know, the bog standard rules to play the game. Let's go through some dice. And I would want Warhammer Fantasy Battles to be easy to learn, but difficult to master. That's what I would want. Hopefully we get that when it comes out. But I just wanted to talk for 20 minutes or so today just about what happened to Warhammer Fantasy Battles in store. What we were told and what, you know, what the training that I got to deal with it. I don't know whether things have changed in the years since. I'd be very interested to hear if they have. But yeah. What do you guys think? Did you guys enjoy Warhammer Fantasy Battles? And what was your favourite memory of it? I honestly... I'm kind of loving that they bring it back, but I'm also kind of dreading it too. Because if anyone can fuck it up... So let's hope. Let's hope beyond hope that it's good when it comes out. Anyway. Thank you very, very, very much for watching, guys. That was Old World Hate. And I'll see you next time.